For our last artist, we will be speaking to someone who performed at Meta Arts Fest last year. He has been producing music in various forms for over 12 years. Under the alias Resolve Dissonance, he self-released three instrumental EPs in 2009, 2010, and 2016, inspired by producers such as Nujabes, Bonobo, and Selection. In recent years, his focus has shifted to using his own vocals and exploring songwriting inspired by contemporary artists such as James Blake, Toro Imoa, and Frank Ocean. He aims to be open, honest, and vulnerable over the lush grooves he creates, exploring the subtleties and idiosyncrasies of friendship, love, and morality in his songwriting. In August 2019, he released the Crashing EP, a collection of songs that showcases his versatility as a producer and vocalist. He's presently working on his next project tentatively, titled Open Book, as well as a collaborative item with a vocalist. Please welcome Kalaaj. Hi, Kalaaj.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure and honor is all mine. Thank you so much for sitting with us. I'm really excited to hear all about your art journey. I guess we'll start there. So, how did you begin your musical art journey?
Yeah, so I was playing piano at a young age and got into playing music at school, like in bands, jazz bands, things like that. Eventually, somewhere along the line, I kind of fell in love with hip hop. The Roots were a big influence on me. They were my first concert I ever went to in Toronto.
Mhm.
And kind of ever since then, I had this sort of impulse to create music. And so kind of did all my own research. How can I make hip hop beats? Because that's what I sort of fell in love with.
Mhm.
Hip hop beats. A lot of stuff from Japan, actually, like Nujabes, the producer you mentioned, really big influence on me and sort of getting my art journey going in that
Mhm.
way. So started there, and then it just kind of continued on. Like started making beat tapes, putting them out online, getting a bit of a response, seeing how that process went, and it was interesting because it was some of the first music I'd ever made, and it
Yeah.
would get a bit of a response. And meanwhile, I was still very much a beginner at it, so it took some time to kind of go from there to get to a point where I'm now, where I feel a little bit more confident in my skills and have a
Right.
bit more tools under my tool belt. So that's sort of how it began. I was in age 15, high school around that time.
Perfect. So I guess you would say your first love of music was more on the production and orchestra side.
Definitely. Like, so hip hop production, beat making, that's like my first love. And that's still like my favorite thing. Like, my favorite
Right.
artist and my favorite music is
Mhm.
generally music that's produced well. And there's a lot of attention to detail, a lot of interesting sort of sound design and things happening where, sound may be coming from the left ear and the right ear and it's kind of going all over and just interesting textures. And so that's kind of what I really fell in love with. And also, the chords, the melodies, the
Right.
harmonies, all that as well that came with that.
I don't know how you could say that when I'm feeling broken. Get back what we've stolen. Everything's a mess, and I don't know how you could say that when I'm feeling broken. Get back what we've stolen. Everything's a mess, and I don't know.
It's so interesting to see this hybrid because it's usually one or the other. So when did you start exploring more of your vocalist side, your singer side?
So when I was a kid, I did do a little bit of vocal lessons. And I did do a bit of classical music vocals in high school, but I wasn't all that great at it. And my confidence sort of dwindled after that. Like,
Oh,
I became young, like as an adolescent, really shy, as a teenager, a little shy about sort of performing and singing. So it took me a long time to kind of get the confidence again to kind of marry the two and try it out again. And when I first began, I was really really rusty. And
mhm.
so when I started this project, I just had a collection of tracks that I had put my vocals on that were sort of like experiments to say, okay, well, let me see how this can go. Can I put beat making and sort of singing back and songwriting all together in one package?
Mhm.
And if so, like, how will that be? And so I just kind of collected all these songs I had over like a course of a couple of years and put them out made a new name for myself. Like
Right.
I was like, I start a new chapter, make it
Mhm.
into a new package, and kind of go from there. So that's how sort of. It was much later in my sort of mid to late 20s where I had that desire to kind of, okay, I'm gonna push this a bit more.
Amazing. So, how do you currently find your musical inspiration? Do you find you always look back at music, or do you look at like future creators that are doing something different, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's definitely a bit of both. I'm interested in a lot of contemporary music. I aim for my music to sort of fit within the contemporary kind of side of things. So I have to kind of know what's sort of fresh and what's new to do that. But at the same time, I think if you do that too much, then you sort of there's a risk of producing a generic kind of sound. So
Right.
it's important to go back and look at historical kind of music and um, jazz music. I have a big love for that from 60s and 70s and 50s, and world music in general, really from any era.
Yeah.
I'll be kind of if I go on a YouTube hole, find something I like, or go to a record store and pick up a record that seems interesting. I'll try to
Hmm.
keep myself on my toes that way, so that I'm not just playing what's like the hottest thing on the latest Spotify algorithm. So I try to keep it interesting that way.
When we're hand in hand, the outside phase, and all I ever wanted. Believe nobody's coming between us. Ooh, nobody is coming between our love.
And would you say it stems from more of like your personal feelings, your intuition, that you find that inspiration, or is it more you're seeking trends or seeking something that everybody is trying to hop on, you trying to innovate?
I would say I wouldn't want to like hop on any particular trend per
Mhm.
se. Like I definitely want to bring forward an original, force to my music. It has to be fresh. It has to be my
Yeah.
own personal kind of
Mhm.
taste. It has to be That's sort of a requirement, I think, and that sort of naturally stems in the way that I work.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening will all be sort of channeled through me. So what I can really control is my sources, what I'm
Mhm.
listening to, and so that's why I'm a little bit deliberate with that, and trying to make sure that I'm sort of gathering things, and it can be anything that sort of gets me to getting to listen to a record. I think most of the time, if like a friend shows me like, "Yo, I really like this record. This
Right.
is really interesting to me," that meaning definitely just elevates it for me usually because there's just so much music out there. So recommendation really helps. Also, just like the artwork or like I don't know, maybe the general aesthetic of it, or if I'm like particularly feeling like Brazilian music, then I
Mhm.
have this maybe some days you wake up and you have this urge or desire to listen to a particular style. Then
Mhm.
maybe that day or that week I'll kind of go into that sound for a while.
Amazing. So, would you say you do you have like a team? Do you collaborate with someone? Do you have any favorite collaborators?
Yeah, so I'm definitely more of like a kind of like a hermit in this way that
Okay.
I produce, but I'm trying to be a lot more conscious about creating with other people.
Mhm.
So right now, my favorite collaborator is my sister, who's a vocalist,
Wow,
and
that's
she's
sick.
yeah, yeah. So her and I, that's when I say I'm collaborating with a vocalist. That's her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have a name yet. So kind of, and we're not really sure exactly how we want to put it out. So, but
Mhm.
we've been working on music throughout the pandemic because she's in my bubble. So we were sort of like able to kind of work on stuff. So that's been really, really exciting because she's a great vocalist and like she challenges me in a way because she's like, I want this to sound like that, or I want this to sound like
Right.
this. And so I don't work like that. I'm very selfish. I'm like, I want my music to sound however I want to sound, how to sound like.
Mhm.
When someone else comes in the mix, there's some goal setting, there's some reference tracks you might use, to again to get a particular sound.
Yeah.
And that's some of the most amazing music I feel like I've ever made. And it's very, very meaningful and beautiful because it's me and my sister making music together. So that's definitely on the top. And there's a number of friends I made. I was living in Calgary for some time. A number of people out there, Fallen Wall, So Divine, um, a number of people who I really, really connected with and
Mm.
collaborated with there. There's a sampler cafe crew of beat makers, producers I met there and collaborated with a number of those folks. So um, I'm in Ontario now, so a little further away from them. And as the pandemic eases, I'm hoping to kind of get open or open myself up for more collaborations.
Rolled all the clocks backwards and woke up feeling great. It feels so nice to have an hour. If I dig deep, I can find it. I know. Can't get worried about going sour. That's why I love you. That's why I love you.
I was just going to say, since we're heading back into more normalcy, things are picking up again in a more positive space. Do you have any goals or anything that future projects that you're looking forward to accomplishing?
Yeah, so I have like an album that I've been working on. Album, EP, project. I'm not really sure how I'm going to kind of put it out, but it's essentially all the tracks I've been working on since a little bit before the pandemic and then throughout the pandemic. So my goal is to try and finish that up and put that out and release it and everything that sort of comes with that, like a release, sort of proper release, videos, and hopefully performances and things like that. So that's my focus, and then also the album with my sister, trying to get that sort of going a little bit more. And hopefully next year we'll see some of that music. It's kind of hard with the creative process and just juggling work and life and other responsibilities. But I'm just going to be patient with the process and kind of see what happens.
That's that all sounds exciting, especially your collaboration with your sister.
Mhm.
Um, so I'll leave you with one last question. So if you were to put your work in a capsule today and someone dug it up 50 years from now, what would you want them to take away from your work? So they open it up, they listen to your music. What lasting impression would you want them to have?
Um, I think when you resonate with a piece of work and it just kind of hits your soul and you just are in the moment and everything sort of cuts away and you're just kind of like present,
Hmm.
that's what I would really hope that my music can do. That's what I think I kind of aim to do with kind of evoking that feeling or evoking that sense or that state of mind. So I hope whatever they see in that sort of time capsule evokes that. Um, so if it's my music or whatever, anything that I put out, I really hope that they get that feeling from it.